So let's go back just a little bit, so that for the benefit of the pod, tell me who you are and where you're from and what's brought you here today.
So my name's Helen Tomlinson. My day job is Head of Talent and Inclusion at the Adecco Group. So we are one of the largest human capital organisations in the world. My main responsibility is across the UK and Ireland. But I have an external role, which I guess is probably why I'm here today. My external role is I'm the government's first ever menopause employment champion. So what that means is I was appointed on International Women's Day 2023 to create and drive the government strategy regarding the attraction and retention of women in the workplace, initially through perimenopause and menopause, but over time and throughout my sort of term and in my most up-to-date report, which I launched on International Women's Day of this year, my 12-month report, we've started to talk more about women's health in the workplace as a broader topic, with the commonality being menstrual health going into menstruation, because that's allowed us to open it across all 5 generations in the workforce.
Yeah. Amazing. Right up my street to be talking about this. And actually, you have to say, have you noticed how much women's health stuff there is here?
Yeah,
it's incredible. So it's really showing that there's space for these conversations, and that I guess that we're ready, which I know is crazy because these issues have been there forever.
Absolutely.
Women have had their menstrual cycles and
menopause
and their fertility challenges and
decades.
Nothing's been any different. So I don't know why it's so but we're definitely we're getting there, aren't we?
Absolutely. And I think I feel really privileged to be able to do my role. It's an entirely voluntary role. And I'm delighted that it's entirely voluntary, because everything I'm doing and creating is free of charge for all women everywhere to be able to access. So it makes it equitable, and it makes it work for women regardless of their employer, their type of employment, whether they choose to work for an employer that's got an ED&I strategy or an HR department, or that their personal socioeconomic demographic, etc.
Yeah. So what where do you think the most progress has been made then for organisations in terms of this, particularly around the menopause? Like what sectors? That's what I was interested in.
So it's really interesting, because when I first started this conversation, less than 20% of organisations had a menopause policy. And that was really my main driver I was lobbying government to make a menopause policy a legal requirement for organisations over 250 people. And actually now that's how I got into the role. And I chose 5 sectors initially with government to look at those sectors where it was difficult to attract and retain women in the workplace, but also where they had a variety of complex roles. So those non-autonomous roles where, I was really lucky when I was perimenopausal. I was a sales director of an employability company and I could manage my own calendar. But if I've been working in a manufacturing plant or as a teacher in a call centre, in the emergency services, all those myriad of jobs where you've no autonomy and have to show up, it would have been very different. So I chose those 5 sectors initially, which were care, retail, hospitality, manufacturing, and professional and technical. And then the education sector asked if we could support them, the aviation sector and the oil and gas industry. So it's growing all the time. But where I've seen the majority of work and drivers, it's difficult to say across which sector. It's more about the size of organisations. So now I think the CIPD statistic from 2023 that was that 49% of organisations have some sort of guiding principles or policy in place around menopause. But it's definitely third sector, public sector that are leading that in terms of having a policy. So that's really interesting to see. It's generally larger organisations in the private sector. But what the important thing is, it's not the policy, it's the cultural change that sits around it. And that's what I've seen work really well in some organisations that can easily be overlaid into smaller organisations. So that's what my No Time to Step Back strategy and my 4-point plan is about. Larger organisations in sectors sharing their learnings and experience and helping smaller organisations to get access to that. Because without the 4 pillars of cultural change, which are education, allyship, lived experience and leadership, a policy is just a policy. It's just words on a page. So I feel that that evolution of the conversation is really important. And the organisations that are doing it well haven't just got a policy or even got a policy. They've got those 4 pillars of cultural change embedded into their organisation.
Yeah. And are you able to share any anecdote or case study of particular organisations that you think are doing really well or have seeing impact?
I think a lot in the manufacturing space, because making change in manufacturing has a really positive impact, because it was previously such a non-autonomous environment. So it's more about the types of things that they're doing. So things like uniform, so changing the uniform to make it more comfortable, to make it in different materials, etc., different colours. So often if you're working with high grade chemicals or food, the uniform would be white. That's not ideal for somebody who is going through, well, anybody who has menstrual challenges, regardless of what age or stage they're going through. So manufacturing organisations, I've seen some really great work. And then another example of uniform, Network Rail have done some great work around their uniform. British Airways have done some great work around theirs. Police forces are starting to look at how they make their uniform. So there's definitely a trend for a topic or an area of focus, which when it's overlaid into other sectors can really help. So that's what I'm seeing more of. A lot of organisations doing very similar things, but how it's reaching out and almost transcending the sectors for the benefit of people who are in those types of roles.
Yeah, amazing. Okay, well, can I take this over to sort of your career then? Because bear in mind the audience here is, you know, people, wellbeing leaders, D&I managers internally, and also, you know, people who are coming into this world of work. Yeah, I'd love to hear a bit about your path to, you know, the things that you're doing.
Absolutely. So I started my career, yesterday I ran a session and we did an icebreaker on, if you were to write your autobiography today, what would it be called and why? And I always say mine is, this is just a stopgap, because I did performing arts at university, and I went into a recruitment business and said, have you got any temporary work? I'm probably going to be in a West End musical very soon. That was in 1995 and I'm still waiting. But I think it's getting ever closer. So it was always, I fell into recruitment like many people did. And I've worked either in recruitment or in the employability and skills sector, getting the long-term unemployed back into work for the best part of the last 30 years almost. And this is actually my first non-operational, non-sales role that I took in 2021 during COVID in a restructure. I took the head of L&D role at the time, now talent and inclusion, at the Adecco Group. And I kind of fell into the ED&I space as well, because I joined the Gender Forum as part of my role, and they wanted somebody to lead on menopause, launching our menopause policy in Adecco. So I did that and kind of grown into that role. That role's evolved, and I've taken over the heading up the committee that looks after all the employee resource groups and helping them to really drive them forward, but also role model that what you can do externally. You know, it was because of my drive and passion that the government had this role and approached me to take it alongside my day job. And, anybody can do that. I don't think there's anything particularly special about what I've done. I was just passionate to make change to help people, particularly women, stay in the workplace longer. It's really, as many things do, it's just evolved into looking at how we grow that aspect of the culture of our business, and we've used those pillars of cultural change for every topic in all of our ERGs that we've developed. And now I'm sharing that passion, that experience, and that strategy with other countries, both from a government perspective but also from an Adecco perspective as well. So the two things work really well together. But that's how it started, really, just that passion for...
Things really escalated for you, didn't they?
It absolutely did. And the whole, I'd been lobbying government, as I say, I'd been meeting with MPs, etc. And then in the background, the Women and Equality Select Committee had recommended that government have somebody dedicated to menopause in the workplace, as did the over 50s champions who look after the job centres, recommended the role as well. And they approached me, and I went on a call. They started telling me about this role. And because they knew I'd worked in recruitment, like a good recruiter, I was making notes, taking a job spec down. And at the end, they said, so, would you be interested in taking on this role? And I was completely blew my mind. So yeah, I mean, it literally is just, that's how it's evolved. And, I sometimes think now, how on earth did I get to? I started off writing down everything that was happening to me, and there was so much that I lost track of, things that I never thought would happen to me. And launching my 12-month report at Downing Street in March was just such a phenomenal experience. Yeah, it really was.
Oh, well, congratulations. It sounds like incredible work, and very much needed. And even though there's been so much progress, there's obviously still so far to go. And there's, I guess in a way, with these kind of more specific women's health issues, in a way, menopause is kind of leading the way a little bit. Like, we've got to get there with fertility. We've got to get there with menstrual cycles in general. And I feel like menopause is...
That was how we started. That was absolutely how we started the conversation. In my 12-month report that I launched in March, my 4 key areas for 2024 are intersectionality, so making sure we have different voices around the table, talking about it, so different experiences, whether that be around ethnicity, race, culture, disability, socioeconomic backgrounds, intergenerational, because that allows us to talk about menstrual health, menstruation, infertility, endometriosis, PMDD, parenthood, perimenopause, menopause, right across the career cycle. The third aspect of it is impact. So the impact it has not only on the person going through it, but the, family, partner, colleagues, etc. And then finally international, because more and more we're sharing best practice globally around those topics, but it's often very one way in terms of menopause. We are probably further ahead in the conversation. But when I went to Japan 2 weeks ago, they talk really openly about menstrual health in the workplace, and they've started the conversation, maybe because of the age demographic, but they've started the conversation with menstruation and now want to move on to menopause. So that was really interesting. A little bit different to see. Yeah, absolutely.
Amazing. How exciting that you got to go to Japan and do that.
It was. I just wasn't there long enough.
With a lot of jet lag by the time.
Absolutely.
So, what's been your highlight whilst you've been here, the water cooler?
I think, seeing all the products, all the opportunity for people to grow, evolve, take that back into their business, and really start to, we've just internally in Adecco, we've just put inclusion and wellbeing together, because you absolutely can't have one without the other becoming a byproduct of each other. So I think to see that here today, and for people to be able to really make a difference in how they retain their staff through focus on wellbeing is really important.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned that actually because it's come up already today. The idea of sort of like the hybrid role
Hmm.
of sort of those functions, and this in the past we've sort of talked about it more as a bit of a frustration, right? Because there's therefore not enough resource,
Yes.
but it absolutely has to work
Mm.
together, like
Yeah, I
they're
agree.
connected. So, yeah, we're
Mm.
with you. So, in terms of Adecco, can you just tell me a bit about the the size of the workforce? It's obviously huge, and what well-being looks like internally.
Hmm. Absolutely. So, in the UK, we've got 2,500 permanent staff,
Yeah,
but we have 35,000 associates
yeah.
out in the field.
Mhm.
So, that we pretty much treat the same as we would treat our staff. And then obviously about 7,000 clients
Yeah,
annually. And what we do internally, we try and overlay with our clients
yeah.
and educate them and look into how we can go out and do that to our associates as well.
Okay.
So well-being is really, important to us, and we focus heavily on how we drive that both through our investment in our charity side,
Hmm.
but also as an additional part of, we look how we look after our staff. So it's very integral in terms of activity, but also looking at how we make sure that we manage the well-being of colleagues who don't want to do take part in our running clubs or our triathlon clubs and all of that sort of thing, but how we look at more health related lifestyle things like we've got somebody within the organization who focuses very heavily on, she's a Wim Hof trained practitioner,
Okay.
so she talks a lot about the breathing and about cold water and all
Hmm.
of that sort of stuff. So we try and make it as inclusive as we can
Yeah.
for everybody in the organization.
Amazing. What do you think about cold water therapy?
Well, we
Got yourself
tried it.
a Lumi bath.
Well, she did a session for me externally as a
Yeah.
part of a government event day. And everybody the following morning who'd been on it, I put on LinkedIn that they'd done a cold shower, but
Mm.
not gone as far as the bath yet. But what I was amazed about how long it trains to actually become a Wim Hof practitioner.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's well, I mean the it's actually pretty scary stuff
Mm.
sometimes. The cold water therapy. So
Yeah,
it's really
absolutely.
important that you're doing it really with like lots of
Yes,
responsibility. So
yes.
yeah, it's pretty crazy. I like a dip in the sea, but
Me too. Me too.
that's
Yeah,
about it.
absolutely.
What do you do for your well-being?
So I try and walk every day. So we Bernardo's is our charity, and we did a walk in January where I committed to doing 5K every day in January, and then I carried it on. But then I'm not at home every day,
Yeah.
and I'm traveling an awful lot. So every day when I am at home, I do 10K before I start work to try and make it up that way. And I find that it really, otherwise I would just be sat on Teams or at my laptop pretty much all the time.
Yeah.
And I got to the stage where I started to miss it when I didn't do it, which is incredible.
Mm.
I'm vegan.
Hmm.
Sometimes because I'm out a lot, sometimes I do have to be
Mm.
vegetarian just to get that.
Yeah.
In Japan, I struggled an awful lot.
Yeah.
And I'd look at, so I do take HRT, but I find that I call myself a dry vegan, so I don't really drink alcohol anymore because the impact of that on HRT was really difficult. So I do call myself a dry vegan, and my daughter often says to me, "It's a good job you're not on any dating apps, Mum, because you'd be so unattractive." But it works. I found that HRT got me about to 80% of where I felt like I used to be, and then becoming vegan and then being alcohol free took me to 120%.
120.
So it really made a big difference.
It is an experiment, isn't it? We've talked about today about like well-being, whether we're talking about how to, support our workforce, or whether we're talking about our own. Like we need to just experiment, and there's change all the time.
Yeah.
Like hormones are changing throughout our life cycle. Like so, therefore, we need to experiment with different,
I
interventions,
agree.
whether it's diet or
And it's a very personal thing,
it
isn't it?
is.
But for me, people say, "Oh, I'm on HRT and I don't feel any different." But
Mhm.
actually, if you're not making those changes as well,
Mhm.
you're never going to feel like you did before. But yeah, it definitely does. And sleep is really important as well. And I found that if I drink alcohol, I don't sleep. So that's the
Yeah.
biggest problem for me, not sleeping.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's very important. I try and make sure that I sleep really, really well
Yeah.
when you're away quite a lot. That can be
Makes such a
quite
difference,
challenging.
doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
I have a 4-month-old baby at home.
Oh my
So
goodness. So
last
you don't get
night,
very much sleep.
no, and last night I stayed with a friend in London because I live in Bristol, and I slept a solid 7 hours.
How great is that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's happened once since he was born. Another time I took myself off to a hotel. But yeah, sleep it's crucial, and I think we underestimate actually
We absolutely
the
do.
importance of
We
sleep.
absolutely. And that was one of the things when we started to talk about impact for the 12-month report, that we'd spoken to the emergency services, we'd spoken to some engineering companies, and they were saying that they are getting their male colleagues coming into work saying, I'm not trying to make it about me, but my wife's not sleeping because she's having hot sweats and she's having to strip the bed, etc. So therefore I'm not sleeping. I can't go sleep in a spare room because we've got our children in a spare room, so I don't feel that I should be either handling heavy machinery, I should be driving a car at speed, or I should be in charge of a firearm. And that's quite a difficult conversation to have, because they're not wanting to make it about themselves, but there really is an impact, because 2 nights of lost sleep is the equivalent of being over the drink drive limit. So it is a real problem.
Yeah, yeah, amazing. Anything else you'd like to share with us today?
No, I just think for me that um collaboration between inclusion and well-being, I think, is a real positive, because it starts to let us look at what works for different groups of people through that intersectional lens. Because if we weave it through everything, we have to look at it from an ethnicity perspective, a disability perspective, gender, LGBTQ plus. So for me, certainly from an organizational perspective, I'm really pleased that we've started to bring that in, and it underpins everything we do.
Yeah, amazing. Well, best of luck with that work.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your
No,
time.
thank you.
And thank you for the work that you're doing with the UK government to, keep menopause as a priority. And yeah, stay in touch with us, won't you?